when 64 Japanese planes attacked one P-40. This pilot's solution left everyone speechless. At 9:27 a.m. on December 13, 1943. Second Lieutenant Philip Adair pulled his Curtiss P-40 Warhawk into a climbing turn over Assam, India, as 64 Japanese aircraft materialized through the morning haze 3 miles east, heading directly for his base at Denjin Airfield. The 23-year-old Adair had flown 43 combat missions with the 89th Fighter Squadron protecting the Hump airlift. But this morning, he was the only pilot airborne when the formation appeared. In the previous 8 weeks, Japanese raids on Allied airfields throughout northeast India had destroyed 47 transport aircraft on the ground and killed 112 personnel. His P-40, nicknamed Lulu Bell and marked with the number 44, he carried 650 caliber Browning machine guns and enough ammunition for approximately 12 seconds of sustained fire. The enemy formation consisted of 24 Mitsubishi Kai, 21 Sally bombers, escorted by approximately 40 Nakajima Ki, 43 Oscar fighters arranged in layers above and below the bomber stream. Intelligence reports indicated that similar-sized raids in Burma had achieved 90% hit rates on undefended airfields. Below him, Denjin Airfield housed 14 C-47 transport aircraft loaded with critical supplies for Chiang Kai-shek's forces in China, a field hospital treating 63 wounded soldiers, and fuel stocks sufficient to support hump operations for 11 days. If the bombers reached the field unopposed, the damage would Allied supply operations over the Himalayas for weeks. The nearest friendly fighters were 38 minutes away at their base in Jorhat. Adair checked his fuel gauge. Full internal tanks, 180 gallons, approximately 90 minutes of flight time at combat power. The Japanese formation was 3,000 feet below him, moving at 240 miles per hour toward the airfield. Standard doctrine called for fighter pilots to wait for reinforcements when outnumbered more than 5 to 1. Adair had 64 to 1 odds. He could radio for help and shadow the formation until support arrived. By then, the bombs would already be falling, or he could attack alone and try to disrupt their bombing run. Adair pushed the throttle forward. His Allison Phi 1710 engine responded immediately, the manifold pressure climbing to 54 inches. The P-40 accelerated to 320 miles per hour. He positioned himself 4,000 feet above the bomber formation, coming at them from the south with the sun behind him. The Oscars hadn't spotted him yet. Their attention was focused forward on the target. He had one advantage. Surprise! The Japanese pilots expected fighters to meet them near the target, not 20 meters out. Adair planned his attack vector. Hit the lead bomber formation first. Ignore the fighters initially. Break their bombing accuracy. Make them scatter, force them to abort the run. Can one P-40 disrupt 64 Japanese aircraft? Please like this video to see how this turns out. Subscribe for more stories, and let's continue back to Adair. The lead Sally bomber group flew in tight formation. 6 aircraft arranged in 2 Vs of 3. Adair rolled inverted, pulled the nose down, and dove at the bombers from their 7 o'clock high position. His airspeed built rapidly. 360 miles per hour, 360. The P-40's Allison engine screamed at full power. Range closed fast. The bomber crews still hadn't seen him. At 800 yards, he opened fire. His 6.50s hammered, tracers arcing toward the lead bomber. Rounds walked up the Sally's left wing. Fabric tore. Metal sparked. The bomber's port engine erupted in orange flame. Black smoke poured from the cowling. The formation broke. Bombers scattered left and right, their tight V dissolving into chaos. Adair pulled up hard, 7 Gs crushing him into a seat, and rolled right. 40 Oscar fighters were diving toward him. The Nakajima Ki 43. Oscar was one of the most maneuverable fighters in the Pacific Theater. Powered by a Nakajima HA-115 engine producing 1,150 horsepower, it could reach 329 miles per hour at 13,000 feet and execute turning circles tighter than any American fighter. The Oscar's butterfly combat flaps allowed it to bleed speed rapidly in turns without stalling. Japanese pilots exploited this advantage ruthlessly. Yes, in the previous 6 months, Oscars had shot down 63 Allied fighters over Burma and northeast India. Adair's P-40N was faster in a straight line, but couldn't match the Oscar's turn rate. The Warhawk's Allison 5, 1710-81 engine generated 1,240 horsepower at 3,000 revolutions per minute, giving the aircraft a maximum speed of 378 miles per hour below 12,000 feet. But in a sustained turning fight, the heavier American fighter would lose energy faster than the lightweight Japanese aircraft. Standard P-40 tactics against Oscars were simple. Never turn with them. Use speed. Hit and run. Extend away. Reset. Adair couldn't extend away. If he fled, the bombers would reform and complete their attack run on Dingan. He had to keep pressure on the formation, keep them scattered, keep them nervous, even if it meant fighting 40 Oscars alone. At the first 4 Oscars came at him in a loose finger 4 formation from his 10 o'clock high. Adair rolled left, pulled the nose up, and fired a 2-conned burst at the lead fighter. 50 caliber rounds missed high. The Oscar broke right. Its wingman followed. Adair reversed, diving away to maintain speed. 2 more Oscars dove from above. He saw them at 400 yards, pulled into a climbing left turn, fired again. No hits. His ammunition counter showed 800 rounds remaining across all 6 guns. Approximately 6 more attacks at his current rate of fire. Behind the fighter screen, the Sally bombers were attempting to reform. 3 groups of 6 aircraft each were closing back into formation. If they achieved their bombing V again, they would press the attack. Adair had perhaps 90 seconds before they reached their release point over Dingan. He rolled out and shoved the throttle to the stop and dove toward the bombers again. 8 Oscars followed him down. The P-40 accelerated to 405 miles per hour in the dive. The Oscars couldn't match that speed. Adair opened the gap, pulled out at bomber altitude, and lined up on the right-hand Sally formation. Range 300 yards. He fired. Tracers converged on the lead bomber's right engine. The Mitsubishi HA-101 radial engine exploded in a fireball. The bomber rolled right, streaming fire and debris. Its wingman broke formation to avoid collision. Adair kicked rudder, skidded left, fired at another Sally. His rounds punched through the bomber's thin fuselage skin. The KY-21 had no armor protection for the crew, no self-sealing fuel tanks. Designed in 1936, it was obsolete by 1943 standards, but it could still carry 2.25 pounds of bombs, enough to destroy everything on Dingan Airfield. The Oscar fighters were closing again, 12 of them this time. Adair's fuel gauge showed 162 gallons remaining. His ammunition counter read 650 rounds. The bombers were 19 meters from Dingan. He had perhaps 4 minutes before they reached drop range. Then his engine started overheating. The Allison 5 11710-81 was a liquid-cooled engine. Coolant circulated through passages in the cylinder heads and block, absorbing heat from combustion, then flowed through a radiator mounted beneath the fuselage. At combat power settings above 50 inches of manifold pressure, the engine generated extreme temperatures. The coolant system was designed to handle sustained operation at those settings for approximately 20 minutes. Adair had been running at full power for 11 minutes. His coolant temperature gauge showed 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal operating temperature was 210. At 250, the engine would begin to fail. He had 3 options: reduce power to let the engine cool, abandon the attack and return to base, or continue fighting and risk engine failure over hostile territory. The Sally bombers were 17 miles from Dingan, still within bombing range, still a threat. Adair kept the throttle forward. 2 Oscars came at him head-on. Closing speed exceeded 600 miles per hour. Both fighters opened fire at 500 yards. Adair saw their muzzle flashes, 7.7mm tracers walking toward his nose. He fired back. His heavier .50 caliber rounds carried more energy and reached farther. At 350 yards, his rounds hit the left Oscar's engine, cowling. The lightweight fighter shuddered, broke left, trailing white coolant vapor. Its wingman followed. Adair rolled right and dove. His coolant temperature hit 240 degrees. The Sally bombers were 15 miles from target. Two formations of 6 aircraft each had reformed into bombing Vs. The third formation was scattered, 3 bombers struggling to rejoin. Adair went for the lead formation again. 6 Oscars tried to intercept him. He dove past them at 390 miles per hour, too fast for them to follow. At bomber altitude, he leveled out and opened fire on the lead Sally. His first burst hit the bomber's right wing root. The wing structure failed. The outer panel folded upward and tore away. The Sally rolled inverted and entered a spin. No parachutes. The crew rode it down. The formation broke again. Bombers scattered in 3 directions. Their bombing accuracy was destroyed. Even if they dropped now, their bombs would be spread across miles of jungle instead of concentrated on the airfield. Adair pulled up hard. His coolant temperature gauge showed 248 degrees. The engine was running rough. He could feel vibration through the control stick. Detonation was starting in the cylinders, pre-ignition from excessive heat. If he didn't reduce power soon, the engine would seize. 8 Oscars dove on him from above. He saw them late, rolled left, too slow. 7.7mm rounds punched through his right wing. Fabric tore. Metal buckled. 1 round hit his right aileron control rod. The aileron response went mushy. He needed more right stick pressure to maintain level flight. Another burst walked up his fuselage. Rounds sparked off his engine cowling. 1 penetrated the coolant reservoir behind the firewall. Green coolant sprayed across his windscreen. The engine temperature gauge climbed past 260 degrees. Steam erupted from the cowling seams. His oil pressure dropped. The Allison was dying. Adair chopped the throttle. The engine RPM fell from 3,000 to 2,400. Not enough power to maintain altitude. The P-40 started descending. 1,000 feet per minute, then 1,500. The Oscars were circling above him, waiting. Then his engine caught fire. Fire in a liquid-cooled aircraft engine follows a predictable sequence. First, burning coolant vaporizes and ignites. The flames spread forward along the engine cowling, drawn by airflow. If the fire reaches the fuel lines running along the engine's left side, the aircraft explodes. Adair had perhaps 30 seconds before that happened. Standard procedure for engine fires was immediate shutdown and bailout, but his altitude was only 8,000 feet, descending rapidly, and he was 12 miles from friendly territory over jungle where Japanese patrols operated. He kept the engine running. The Allison's fuel mixture could be leaned manually. Adair pulled the mixture control back to idle cutoff for 3 seconds, starving the engine of fuel. The fire intensity decreased. He pushed the mixture forward again. The engine coughed, caught, continued running, but rough. Power output had dropped to approximately 60%. Not enough to climb, barely enough to maintain level flight. He was committed to flying home on a burning, damaged engine or abandoning the aircraft over hostile territory. The Sally bombers were 13 miles from Dingen, still close enough to turn back and attack, but their formations had disintegrated. Individual bombers were heading southeast toward Burma. The raid was broken. The airfield was safe. Adair turned southwest toward his base at Nguli, 43 miles away. Approximately 15 minutes of flight time if the engine kept running. 6 Oscars followed him. At 7,000 feet, his engine oil pressure dropped to 0. The Allison ran on oil pressure to lubricate its connecting rods, crankshaft and camshaft. Without oil pressure, metal ground against metal. Friction generated heat. Heat caused expansion. Components seized. Adair felt the engine vibration increase. The propeller began windmilling unevenly. Power output fell further. His airspeed dropped to 180 miles per hour. The P-40's stall speed was 120. He was losing the margin between controlled flight and falling. Behind him, the Oscars closed to 400 yards. They didn't fire. They were watching, waiting for the engine to fail completely, waiting for him to bail out or crash. One Oscar pulled alongside, close enough for Adair to see the pilot's face. The Japanese pilot gestured downward. "Land the aircraft. Surrender. Become a prisoner." Adair ignored him. At 6,000 feet, smoke began filling his cockpit. Not from the engine fire, from electrical wiring behind the instrument panel. The rounds that had hit his fuselage had severed control cables and damaged the electrical system. Smoke burned his eyes and throat. He slid the canopy open. Wind blast cleared some of the smoke, but the slipstream made breathing difficult. His airspeed fell to 160 miles per hour. The Oscars backed off. They weren't going to waste ammunition. The American pilot was already dead. His aircraft was crippled. The engine was dying. He would crash in the jungle. They circled higher, watching him descend. At 4,000 feet, Adair's right aileron control cable snapped. The aileron flopped to full deflection. The P-40 rolled right and the nose dropped into a dive. But he hauled back on the control stick with both hands. Nothing. The elevator cables were damaged. He had no pitch control. The nose stayed down. His airspeed increased. 200 miles per hour.